It all starts in a military camp, and inside a tent, the MC sits polishing his sword. He thinks to himself that this blade is the ultimate proof of his loyalty. The young man reflects on the oath of allegiance he swore to Lord Atlas, knowing that his entire existence is defined by that very weapon. All of a sudden, someone pushes open the tent flap, calling out for Zeno. The young warrior quickly gets up and gets ready to receive his guest. Zeno drops to his knees immediately before Lord Atlas lets him know they march at dawn and orders him to lead the vanguard to shatter the enemy's main force. He demands that Zeno bring back the head of the enemy general, Garzas, to bring ultimate glory to the Arclight name, cold-heartedly warning the young man not to let him down. Zeno remembers that snowy day when Lord Atlas took him in when he had nothing to his name. He recalls the exact moment he was given a reason to keep living during his darkest hour. Back then, the little boy looked up, his eyes shining with hope amidst the freezing cold. It was right then and there that he decided his life would belong entirely to Lord Atlas. After looking back on those nostalgic memories, he answers right away that he will carry out the Lord's orders. To the exact letter, Atlas turns on his heel and leaves the tent. Leaving the warrior all by himself, Zeno grips his sword tightly, ready to lay down his life on the field of battle. In the middle of the chaotic clash, Zeno charges into the enemy lines, delivering lightning-fast strikes. He pulls off flawless moves, cutting down every adversary who dares to step close. With sharp focus in his eyes, the young man keeps fighting without holding back for even a single second. He pauses for a brief moment, surrounded by foes who have fallen to his blade. Right then, a powerful wave of enemy cavalry comes charging straight toward him. Zeno stands his ground alone, bracing himself to face the heavy charge heading his way. One of the enemy riders rushes forward with a crazy grin, fully confident he's going to crush him into dust. The young man reflects that everything he ever built was meant to serve the House of Arclight. And even if the extreme strain makes him cough up blood, he knows his blade of loyalty was forged by giving up his very soul. Completely worn out, he takes his stance to focus all his remaining strength into one single point. Zeno smiles and unleashes his ultimate move, Phantom Shadow. The technique creates a scary distortion in the air just as the horses close in. In the blink of an eye, the enemies are wiped out by the warrior's terrifying strike. Allied troops watch from afar, whispering about that monstrous fighting style that definitely doesn't belong to the Arclight family. Right after that, Zeno drops to his knees, coughing up a huge pool of blood. The other soldiers warn everyone to stay away, calling him low-born trash. The young man hears every insult while trying to catch his breath after the heavy toll of that power. Gasping for air, he feels the awful physical price that comes with using such strength. Making matters worse, a second wave of cavalry begins charging toward him. Zeno spots the danger and realizes things are looking really bad. He knows deep down he can only handle using Phantom Shadow just one last time. The young warrior looks up with tired eyes, seeking support from his leader high up on the cliffside. Lord Atlas watches the whole scene from atop his black horse. The Lord just looks down at the situation with a cold, uncaring expression, realizing no help is coming. Zeno bites his lip hard. He states he will do as his lord desires and prepares himself to fight once more. Zeno accepts that he will fight until the end, even if it costs him his very life. From above, Atlas keeps watching the young warrior's sacrifice without lifting a single finger. Zeno gathers his final strength and shouts out that everything he does is for Lord Atlas. Atlas watches the devastating attack from afar, thinking to himself that everything is playing out just as he planned. Suddenly, a strange golden energy begins leaking from Zeno's body as he moves. Seeing this from the cliff, Lord Atlas mutters that the time has come, because if that energy grows any higher, the kid will no longer be a useful tool. The Lord gives the signal, and his mages begin casting a dark, dangerous spell. A sudden explosion of twisted, colorful magic hits the battlefield out of nowhere. Zeno is caught completely off guard and screams as he realizes he's trapped in a powerful shadow binding array. Feeling his strength drain away, he looks up in total desperation and asks why this is happening. The spell locks his body down completely, suffocating his magic energy. The impact is so heavy that the warrior spits out a huge mouthful of blood all at once. Zeno screams in pure agony as the spell drains every last bit of his power and causes unbearable pain. Seeing the young man so weak, an enemy soldier steps up, claiming his luck has finally run out. The enemy raises a heavy battle axe and calls Zeno a monster, getting ready to land the finishing blow. The man strikes hard, hitting Zeno, who lets out a painful cry as blood splatters across the ground. The executioner laughs and mentions he's just fulfilling a deal made with Zeno's master, telling him to hold a grudge against Atlas instead. Lying there, bleeding out, Zeno wonders if Lord Atlas really planned all of this, right as heavy footsteps approach. The heavy sound of metallic steps echoes across the field as the young man, lying on the dirt, looks toward the noise. Standing before him is the imposing figure of Lord Atlas in his heavy, shining armor. Atlas comes to a stop right in front of the severely wounded warrior and calls his name in an icy tone. With his bloodshot eyes wide and filled with bloody tears, Zeno can barely believe what he's seeing. Showing no mercy whatsoever, Atlas looks down and lets him know that his role in this war ends right here. Zeno stammers with great difficulty, begging for an explanation as to why his lord is doing this. The young man reaches out a bloody hand toward the lord and, with a weak voice, calls him Father Atlas, stares back with total disgust, harshly telling the orphan not to get the wrong idea. The head of the Arclight house states without hesitation that he never once considered the kid a real son. The Lord emphasizes that he never had that feeling for even a fraction of a second, while Zeno's reflection cries blood on the ground. He begins explaining that on the day he found him in the snow, he looked at those nearly dead eyes and got an idea. Back then, little Zeno was sprawled out on the cold ice, completely helpless. Atlas reveals he realized right then that the abandoned kid would make a fine combat tool. The Lord figured that all he had to do was give the boy a reason to live, and he would show dog-like loyalty for the rest of his life. The young man was always meant to be used as a convenient sword to handle his master's most dangerous problems. However, Atlas admits that for a simple tool, Zeno ended up growing way too strong and well-crafted. He remembers that ever since childhood, the boy displayed a spiritual power that was way off the charts. Because of that, Atlas confesses he did everything he could over the years to keep that power under control. He used special suppressants to hold that strength back, but realized things went completely off the rails recently. The Lord explains that the golden light shining during the fight was ultimate proof that the kid's energy was overflowing. Atlas says it was only a matter of time before Zeno turned against them, but the young man whispers that he would never dream of such betrayal. Desperate and severely injured, Zeno shouts over and over that he would never do something like that to his savior. Even so, the warrior takes another heavy blow, causing even more blood to stain the battlefield floor. The executioner complains that the kid is too noisy, but Atlas cuts him off, saying he will reveal the true meaning behind the name Zeno. The Lord cruelly reveals that within the House of Arclight, his name simply translates to disposable sword. Right after, Atlas and his guards break into loud laughter, mocking the fallen warrior's tragic state. With no strength left to resist, the young man's leg goes completely limp against the dusty dirt ground. Zeno's face lies pressed against the freezing soil in the middle of a dark pool of his own blood. He realizes his end is near and remembers that he gave his whole life and even his precious sword to that man. The young man cries, thinking about how he gave his absolute all just for the Lord to toss him aside without blinking an eye. The young warrior's arm falls completely lifeless, right next to his body stretched out on the floor. The enemy soldier startles as he notices a sudden change in the young man, while Atlas just keeps watching. In a desperate final attempt, Zeno bites the blade of his own sword and tries to trigger his technique one last time. With his eyes glowing brightly in a final burst of fury, he spends every single drop of energy he has left. The young man lets out a soft moan of pain as his eyelids begin to feel incredibly heavy. Finally, Zeno completely collapses over his pool of blood, losing consciousness entirely in the middle of the field. The executioner lets out a relieved laugh, saying the kid almost gave him a heart attack with that last-ditch effort. He lifts his axe, calling Zeno a stupid monster, while the young man thinks to himself that the very first reason he was given to live was simply to become a tool in the hands of others, all while the enemy yells at him to just go ahead and pass on. The young man accepts that he was created solely to be used and cold-heartedly tossed away by the ones he protected so much. In his final breaths, he watches Atlas's boots walk away and wonders why he tried so hard for so long right after. He feels a warm sensation and notices the crest of the Elminster family, the most powerful mages on the continent out of nowhere. A very gentle hand touches his face with love, and a soft voice mentions that he's finally awake. A gorgeous blonde woman gives a sweet smile and lovingly calls him her sweet little baby. Startled, the young man opens his eyes wide, which are now bright gold, and wonders in complete shock if he really turned into a baby. He breaks out into a cold sweat, totally confused as he tries to process this unbelievable situation. Looking up, he gets a massive jump scare when he notices his hands are now tiny and chubby. The reincarnated warrior panics internally, unable to make sense of anything happening to his body. Empire history shows that the territory is split between the House of Arclight, who value the sword above all else, and the influential Elminster family, who view magic as the ultimate power in the world. Legend has it that the great founder of the Elminsters was so strong, he created an entire continent using just a single spell. The young man finds it super ironic that someone like him, who dedicated his whole life to the blade, ended up reborn into the exact opposite family. While he pretends to be asleep, a massive wave of blue magical energy starts flowing naturally all around him. He snaps his golden eyes open. Startled by what he's feeling inside his brand new body, the little guy is completely blown away by the heavy surge of power vibrating deep down inside. He realizes he's packing an absurdly massive, endless pool of spiritual power that's overflowing. The young man understands that this is the real power Lord Atlas had sealed away using potions in his past life. With a cheeky smirk on his face, he thinks to himself that, in the end, the heavens didn't abandon him after all. Now he's got the absolute perfect environment and the strongest magical bloodline in the world for a brand new start. The little guy decides he's going to use all this limitless spiritual energy and every resource at his disposal. He swears with pure hatred that he'll use whatever it takes to get his long-awaited payback against Lord Atlas. But the boy knows that before any big moves, he needs to gain total control over all the power of the Elminster family. Suddenly, the serious mood vanishes when he gets swarmed by eager servants offering him delicious treats and shiny toys. A whole crowd of maids and chefs drops to their knees before the mother and baby, competing for the little guy's attention. The head chef smiles with excitement and opens up a glowing jar, mentioning he made this special treat just for Lord Lucius. He proudly explains that it's high-grade baby food made from sap, harvested directly from the legendary world tree. Lucius makes a face of pure panic, while the chef keeps laughing, teasing him to open wide. One of the maids shoves the chef out of the way and shows off a golden rattle, claiming the servant stayed up all night infusing it with magic. She recalls the ritual where all the maids joined forces to focus their energy into the fancy toy. The chef and the maid start arguing like crazy over who gets to spoil the baby more, leaving Lucius totally speechless. Watching the hilarious drama unfold, the boy's mother lets out a sweet laugh at the whole situation. She gently asks everyone to settle down, warning them that they're going to end up scaring little Lucius like that. The mother gives him a cozy hug and asks with a smile if he doesn't agree with her. The baby keeps a straight face, thinking to himself that he can't let himself get carried away by fake feelings of affection. He remembers how he was treated like a nobody orphan back in his tragic past life. Lucius reflects that all this over-the-top love he's getting right now is purely because of his massive magical potential. The young man recalls coughing up blood on the battlefield and knows better than to get his hopes up over nothing. When he finally manages to roll over on the bed, the maids go completely wild celebrating, while he secretly plans to use all this luxury for his revenge. A whole week has passed since he reincarnated, and those few days were more than enough for him to figure out how things work around here. Little Lucius sits up on his massive luxury bed, holding his baby bottle while deep in thought, he notices that the magical prowess and teaching methods of the Elminster family are far beyond anything he ever imagined. To give you an idea, the maids have to cast high-level spells just to prep a simple bottle filled with spiritual power. The milk prep process is so intense that it leaves the maids completely wiped out right afterward. On top of that, complex magic formulas are subtly taught through the sweet lullabies his mother sings to him. Lucius plays around on the bed while the servants watch him happily, clapping at every single move he makes. Holding his bottle, the young man thinks to himself that it still feels super weird having to play the part of a real baby. Lucius looks down at his tiny hand and decides it's a great time to test out the strength of his new body. He remembers that the true core of Phantom Shadow lies in focusing all accumulated power into one tiny point. The boy recalls doing that exact same thing by focusing his strength into his sword blade in the past. With total drive, he starts gathering every single drop of his spiritual energy to take full control of his power. Lucius clears his mind and thrusts his little hand forward with every bit of concentrated force he's got. All of a sudden, a massive beam of blue magic energy shoots straight up toward the bedroom ceiling. The power is so overwhelming that it blasts right through the castle roof, lighting up the night sky over the estate. Down in the castle kitchen, the head chef gets such a massive jump scare from the impact that he drops a potato right on the floor. In the hallway, Lucius's mom and one of the maids panic as they feel a crazy shockwave of magic ripple through. The huge blue flash spreads across the sky, catching the eye of every single resident around the town. Lying in his crib, Lucius is gasping for air, realizing how drastically his spiritual energy blew up in just 1 week. He smirks, super impressed with his own power, thinking that things are going to be wild if he manages to master this strength. The baby closes his eyes, determined to pour all his effort into learning how to control this energy like a charm. Meanwhile, his mom rushes down the hallways in a total panic alongside the maid to check out what happened in her son's room. She bursts into the space shouting Lucius's name, mentioning she heard a massive explosion sound coming from right there. Upon stepping into Lucius's room, however, the mother and the maid find the entire place completely silent. They spot the baby sleeping peacefully inside the crib and start thinking the whole thing was just their imagination playing tricks. The mom walks over lovingly, wondering what kind of cute dreams her little baby boy is having. The next day, she sits back comfortably in a rocking chair near the window while holding her son with lots of love. Out of nowhere, the maid Fran comes sprinting into the hall in a total frenzy, calling out to her mistress at the top of her lungs. Fran is sweating bullets, nervously warning that she just got some awful news coming straight from the palace. Keeping her cool and elegant composure, Lucius's mom tells the servant to calm down and asks what the issue is. Fran explains that an official delegation escorted by the Imperial Guard just pulled up, bringing an inspector from the royal family. Lucius overhears the chatter and gets super curious upon hearing that an inspector from the Empire is on the property. The mother grows worried, wondering why there's such a sudden visit right while the head of the house is away traveling. Lucius picks up on the fact that they caught the magical blast from last night, realizing things just got super tricky. A short while later, all the mansion staff gather in the grand entrance hall to welcome the royal guests. The mom sits with an imposing presence on the sofa, wrapping little Lucius in her blue cloak to keep him safe. The main gates swing open, and a mysterious guy in a black hood steps inside, backed by heavily armed royal guards. The lady of the house stands up, holding the baby to greet the emperor's envoy with absolute class. The mysterious guest walks in a slow, noisy fashion across the marble floor of the main hall. The mother and little Lucius watch the hooded man's steps with tons of suspicion and high tension. The inspector comes to a stop in front of her and greets her formally, calling her Lady Elminster. He coldly lets her know they can skip the small talk, as he arrived to deliver an urgent imperial decree. The man explains that the night before, the Empire's magic surveillance network picked up something way off the charts. He mentions that a wild wave of magic popped up in the region, an insane event that happens only once every 1,000 years. The envoy points his finger, stating with firm confidence that the source of all that mysterious power is hidden right there. He makes it crystal clear that the massive strength originated from inside the lands belonging to the famous Elminster family. The staff members start whispering back, and forth in terror, having no clue where such absurd power could have come from. The inspector warns in a deadly serious tone that if the investigation proves this source poses any kind of threat, they will be forced, by order of imperial law, to run a complete purification sweep on the whole location. Fran is totally terrified hearing the threat, praying with all her heart that nothing bad happens to the family. The guy in black states that this wipeout is a sacred duty they must carry out no matter what it takes. Right after, he holds up a shiny magical glass orb to kick off the inspection process. The inspector sets up the device right before the watchful, worried eyes of everyone standing in the hall. The visitor looks down at the glass orb, thinking to himself that the culprit behind that crazy energy is definitely inside this hall. The magical item starts spinning at top speed in the guy's hand, making the vibe in the room even more intense. Suddenly, the magic sphere starts glowing like crazy as it channels the surrounding energy. A beam of golden light shoots straight out of the orb, pointing right to where the mother is holding little Lucius. The inspector locks his gaze on her with an icy stare, calling her Lady Elminster once again. The inspector turns to the mom, politely asking her to take one step forward so they can begin the test. She calmly agrees, but holds her son extra tight against her chest with deep concern before stepping up. The lady hands Lucius off to a maid, asking her to take great care of the baby and reassuring everyone that everything will be fine. The guy excuses himself and gets ready to use his testing tool directly on Lady Elminster. Lucius's mom stays completely still as the magic sphere begins to glow like crazy right in front of her chest. Analyzing the glow, the inspector is left completely shocked upon realizing that the massive spiritual power isn't coming from the lady at all. He gets totally confused, trying to figure out where on earth that crazy strength could be coming from. Out of nowhere, the magic orb changes direction all on its own and starts glowing with a terrifying intensity. The magic object shakes so violently in the inspector's hand that it looks like it's about to shatter into pieces. Right then, the sphere shoots a massive golden beam straight toward the spot where the servants are gathered. The light beam points with absolute precision right at the maid holding little Lucius in her arms. The inspector rushes forward, reaching out his hand to try and contain the device that's going totally out of control. He breaks out into a cold sweat, completely unable to hide the panic on his face at what he's witnessing. The spiritual pressure coming off the baby is so monstrous that it creates cracks all over the surface of the magic sphere. Right after, the powerful sacred artifact explodes into dozens of sharp pieces right in front of the inspector. Glass shards fly all across the hall while Lucius watches the whole display with a terrifying level of calm. The man stands frozen in total terror, starting to consider the insane idea that the source of all that power is actually the newborn baby Lady Elminster, and all her servants go into total panic mode seeing the shocking scene unfold. The hooded man locks his eyes on Lucius, asking himself in total disbelief if the source of everything is really that infant. He shouts that it's impossible, unable to process what his own eyes are showing him. The group of mages stands there stunned, because an indestructible sacred treasure should never break just from someone's spiritual pressure. From the maid's arms, Lucius stares back at the man with a cold, analytical golden gaze full of absolute superiority. Determined to get some real answers, the inspector lets them know he's going to connect his own soul directly to the baby's. He projects magic circles all around himself to force the link and uncover the true nature of that soul. However, the moment he attempts to touch the boy's mind, the guy takes a brutal hit of feedback energy that nearly knocks him off his feet. He jumps back, freaked out by the power of the mental counterattack, wondering what kind of crazy barrier that is, trying to look even deeper. He finally catches a tiny glimpse of the baby's soul and is left utterly horrified. The man realizes that the sheer amount of spiritual energy is so overwhelming, he can't even reach the core of the boy's soul. The inspector feels that trying to stare into Lucius's soul feels exactly like staring directly at the sun. Right in the middle of all that blinding light, he catches sight of a mysterious black flame and realizes something terrifying. Snapping back to reality, Lucius's mom steps right in front of him, demanding to know what the inspector managed to see. She holds a firm stance to protect her son, even though she's super worried on the inside. The man explains with total seriousness that the duty of imperial inspectors is to follow the strict guidelines of the Empire. He quotes an ancient, sacred book written back in the early days of the Empire to prevent a terrible prophecy from coming true. The inspector reminds her that the old scriptures warn about the greatest disaster capable of wiping out the entire nation. The prophecy claims that whoever carries the curse of the abyss inside a sacred soul will bring total ruin and plunge the empire into darkness. The guy coldly reveals that the state of Lucius's soul matches the exact description written in that awful prophecy. The mother takes a step back, horrified by the reveal, frantically whispering that it can't possibly be true. The inspector states that the curse on the baby's soul is the spark of tragedy, and he will act under full imperial authority. He orders his soldiers to wipe out the threat right then and there, wanting to nip it in the bud before it's too late. The guards take an aggressive stance. While the tension in the main hall reaches an absolute boiling point, Lucius gets annoyed and gives the Imperial soldiers a deadly glare, ready to throw down if things go south. The maid squeezes him tight to protect him as the men in black start surrounding them. One of the Imperial knights rests his hand on the hilt of his blade, getting ready to draw it at any second. At that exact moment, Lucius's mom steps forward with clenched fists, shouting at them to freeze right where they are. A massive amount of pink magic energy starts floating around her, completely spooking the soldiers. She releases her overwhelming magic aura, warning them in a firm tone that she won't let anyone lay a single finger on her son. The mother's look changes completely, glowing with a fierce determination to guard little Lucius from any danger. The inspector stares back surprised, asking if she really has the guts to break the sacred laws of the Empire itself. Lady Elminster replies with pure authority that a single tear from her son is worth way more than all the laws of the Empire combined. She stares the man down with a bold look, stating that this is what being a real mother actually means. Lucius watches her with eyes wide open, deeply moved by Celestia's brave and protective stance. The Imperial Inspector asks her with total gravity if she's truly prepared to face the heavy consequences. The two forces clash in the hall, with the Empire group casting blue magic while Celestia manifests majestic pink wings. The guy stares at the lady with a dark look, but she stands her ground with a confident smirk on her face. The inspector starts gathering power in his hands, but suddenly backs off and cancels the spell he was powering up. One of his assistant mages catches the boss's hesitation and is left completely clueless as to why he stopped. The assistant asks in shock if the leader really plans on turning a blind eye to such a dangerous situation. The inspector lowers his head thoughtfully, muttering that the laws of the Empire are indeed crystal clear. He explains that the law requires cutting out evil at the root, but wonders if a child raised with so much love would really turn into a monster. The man watches Celestia hug and comfort her maids with pure sweetness. Amidst that crazy, tense moment, he decides he wants to watch the kid grow up firsthand to judge the boy's future for himself. The guy walks over and exchanges a quiet, analytical look with little Lucius. Right after, he turns to Lady Celestia, reminding her that she is the daughter of the powerful Duke. He asks if she's really down to stand against the Empire just to protect that child in her arms. The inspector closes his eyes for a second and shocks everyone by announcing he's going to join her, because Lucius's mom looks visibly surprised, but takes a deep breath, feeling a massive wave of relief from that decision. The man adds that if the boy strays from the righteous path down the road, they will both pay the ultimate price for that mistake. The inspector turns to head out with his men, asking if she fully understands the deal. He glances back one last time, warning her strictly never to forget the promise she just made right after. The massive marble gates of the hall slam shut with a heavy, final sound. Celestia remains standing in the middle of the huge, quiet hall after the Imperial group takes off. As soon as the danger passes, all the tension leaves her body, and her eyes start welling up with tears. Her legs give out from pure anxiety, and she sprints across the hall straight toward her son. She frantically runs over to the maid holding Lucius, calling his name with a shaking voice. Celestia cradles the baby's face with trembling hands, thanking the heavens over and over that he's safe and sound. She pets Lucius with pure desperation and love, crying tears of relief after almost losing him. The mom falls to her knees on the floor, saying with a shaky voice how happy she is to see her precious boy safe. Tears of fear and relief stream down Celestia's face as she lets out all the pent-up fear. She hugs the baby tight to her chest and smiles warmly through her tears, promising to protect him forever. Resting against his mom's shoulder, little Lucius watches her quietly with a somewhat serious, thoughtful look. Inside the Imperial carriage heading back to the palace, an assistant asks if it was really okay to leave that kid alive. The leader smirks, telling him to let the Emperor know they found a legendary talent that will bring massive wins for the nation. 12 whole years pass by since that day, and now we see a massive training chamber packed with glowing magic circles. Lucius, now a 12-year-old young man, trains right in the middle of the room, dodging blasts of purple light spikes. He smoothly dodges every single magic attack using simple, effortless hand gestures. The young guy wants to test his limits, clearing his mind to pull even more magic power into his intense training session. He pushes himself to the limit, forcing his mind to hit peak concentration, despite the crazy pressure. Balancing on a small floating platform, he thinks to himself that the closer he gets to death, the more his power grows and levels up perfectly, letting him control his strength without a hitch. Lucius feels like his massive magic energy is finally getting refined to the maximum through this dangerous method. However, pure exhaustion hits him out of nowhere, making him lose his balance and nearly fall off the structure. He sits down on the platform totally wiped out, catching his breath while wiping sweat off his forehead. Right then, his mom Celestia shows up alongside a servant. Calling out to him as she looks up, Celestia complains with a worried tone that he's pushing it way too far again with that reckless training. The young man stands up on the floating platform with total composure and chill vibes. He smiles down at his mom and kindly responds that he's feeling totally fine. Lucius leaps off the high platform, reminding her that he's been grinding this exact same crazy workout every single day for the past 12 years. The mother and maid watch in total shock as he free falls from a pretty wild height. With ultimate grace, the young man uses a gentle breeze of wind magic to glide down smoothly to the floor. The guy lands cleanly on his feet right in front of his mom and the maid. Fran Lucius lifts his head and flashes a proud smile for pulling off a picture-perfect landing. Fran goes completely ballistic, shouting that he's putting himself in huge danger whenever he drops his guard, reminding him she almost died 3 times back when she was a mage. Lucius just gives an awkward smile, saying he got the message, while Celestia gets a kick out of watching the servant lecture him. The young man stays locked in, remembering he spent the last 12 years grinding intensely just for this exact moment. Fran calls out to the young master with a serious face, hinting that all his hard work is finally about to pay off. She holds out her hands respectfully, asking Lucius to take the envelope she's handing over. The young guy reaches out and takes the letter, sealed up tight with a shiny green wax stamp. He pops open the envelope and starts reading through the document with top-tier focus. Once he finishes reading, Lucius lets out a dark smirk, thinking he's been waiting his whole life for this exact day. The letter is an official invite to the Royal Academy selection ceremony, the spot where the top prodigies of the Empire gather up. The boy recalls that the valedictorian graduating from that high-end school always gets a special top-tier reward. That student gains an insane divine blessing that breaks past human limits, something even Lord Atlas received back in the day. The young man remembers his past life as Xeno, and just how ruthless and powerful Lord Atlas was in combat. He recalls the Lord had unbelievable skills, and that he personally witnessed the man's terrifying power up close. Back then, as the warrior Xeno, he always worried about the dangers his master faced out on the battlefield. Lucius grips his own chest with sheer drive, knowing he needs to snatch that divine blessing to finally take him down. He swears that his first major step toward revenge will be rising as the #1 student in the entire academy. Days later, the event kicks off in a massive, breathtaking arena crammed with thousands of hyped-up spectators up in the VIP balcony. His mom, Celestia, watches everything with super high anxiety. Next to her loyal maid, Fran Lucius, struts with an imposing stance through the main entrance hall alongside the other exam applicants. Various rich nobles watch from the upper galleries, dying to see how the young mages perform. The boy keeps his head held high, locking his eyes on the huge arena floor where the test will go down out of nowhere. Complete silence washes over the venue as the start of the trials is announced. The high priest takes the stage, letting everyone know the hyped-up Royal Academy selection ceremony is about to begin. Right on cue, the big magic containment cells start opening up right in the middle of the field. The candidates gear up to take on the crazy challenges thrown by the famous Academy's examiners. Lucius tracks the movement with a serious face, his golden eyes glowing with pure hype. The first monster gets let loose into the arena with a loud crash as the rules for the yearly exam get laid out. The test consists of 2 main jobs the applicants have to pull off: defense and threat suppression. The youngsters have to ensure total safety for several sage eggs floating all around them throughout the fight. At the same time, they're forced to neutralize the terrifying, aggressive magic beast known as the Crystal Lizard. It's explained that a detailed performance review for each person will be run automatically by a floating device up in the sky. This device goes by the name Scales of Judgment, floating majestically right above the battle arena. The magic object will track defense, strength for the eggs, and attack power against the beast completely separately. Gold weights will get tossed onto the scale pans based on performance, locking in the pass or fail for each applicant. Once the rule explanations wrap up, the examiners order all the youngsters to head over to the waiting area. Walking over to the waiting room, Lucius starts drawing eyes from a few nobles watching from afar. The guys start talking mad trash, calling him the cursed kid of the Elminsters and saying he's only alive out of pure pity. They mock him, saying the kid should have been 6 feet under a long time ago if the royal inspectors hadn't shown mercy. Back then, Lucius completely brushes off the toxic comments, keeping his cool and marching straight ahead. The host announces the start of the trials by calling up the first contender, Lilia Magnate, who steps up flexing fire magic. Lilia stares down the giant crystal lizard with total rage, screaming at the creature that she's going to burn it to absolute cinders. She launches a devastating fire spell, blasting the magic beast with a massive fireball. After that crazy fire display, the system rates her performance as rank A in attack and rank D in defense. The scales of judgment level out, displaying the official call confirming Lilia passed the trial. Lilia turns her back super annoyed for failing to score top marks across the board as the next player gears up. The announcer calls up the next applicant, a hooded guy who drops shadow magic to lock down the lizard. The young man makes his move, and the scales start shifting to calculate his skill results. Snagging an A rank in defense and a C rank in attack, the guy gets his pass confirmation too and walks off happy. Right after, the next candidate gets called up, dropping plant magic to set up his defense. Next, another contender dashes forward to strike with her glowing sword, yet another young girl uses her spirit magic to guard the eggs and manages to secure a pass. The host calls out Hector Gilbert, and the crowd goes wild seeing the young noble step into the arena. People start chatter that Hector is seen as the big prodigy of the new generation of imperial swordsmen. Lucius watches super surprised, as he never heard a peep about the Gilbert family in his past life. Standing before the crystal lizard, Hector scoffs that he doesn't need any boring magic tricks. He lunges forward with crazy speed, backing his own family's signature sword style 100%. He gets a firm grip on his hilt, channeling a terrifying wave of red energy. With a cold look, he locks onto his target to deliver a silent, lethal slash. In the blink of an eye, Hector finishes his sword move and pops up right behind the beast. The attack slices the massive crystal lizard clean in half with insane power. But the force of the strike was so crazy that it accidentally sliced one of the floating eggs too. The magic scales start moving, and gold weights drop fast onto the pans. The massive crystal lizard crashes down, defeated in the arena, right before the young swordsman Hector lands a top score in attack and an A rank in defense, taking the #1 spot in the test. The other candidates stand there shocked, whispering that the strike was way too fast to even track. Finally, the host calls up Lucius Elminster as the final candidate to take the trial. The audience starts whispering with major disrespect, calling the boy the cursed child of the family. They doubt Lucius can pull off anything cool after the wild show Hector just put on. Hector watches the boy's entrance with an arrogant, cocky smirk on his face. The crystal lizard revives and starts charging up a magic attack, pointed right at Lucius Celestia, and Fran watch super worried, while Lilia and the Imperial Inspector keep their eyes locked on too. The monster fires off a colossal wave of purple energy charging furiously right at Lucius. A noble asks the director how first-year students could possibly handle a crazy attack like that. The director explains that the expected move would be building a massive shield to guard the eggs first. However, Lucius stays totally chill, locking his eyes on the incoming projectiles. Out of nowhere, a glowing line cuts through the air, leaving the massive beast completely confused. The examiners and the director widen their eyes as they catch on to what's about to drop. Lucius starts weaving and deflecting the blasts with mind-blowing precision. He pulls off mid-air flips while swatting away the magic blasts with insanely light touches. The director watches the whole thing. In total shock, unable to process the kid's crazy agility, he notices the boy is manipulating pure spiritual energy without even chanting a single spell. It literally looks like Lucius is snatching every single raindrop in the middle of a massive storm. With total command over his mind and body, the young man glides like royalty across the field. He points his finger, focusing his spiritual power to deliver the game-ending strike. The crystal lizard tries charging up another powerful magic wave inside its mouth, but Lucius drops down at crazy speeds, aiming his condensed energy straight at the mark. He orders the creature to freeze and fires a beam of light that punches right through the monster. The lizard gets totally paralyzed by the strike, while every single egg stays completely untouched. A deep silence washes over the entire arena as the massive beast crashes to the ground. Suddenly, one of the gold weights drops with crazy force onto the magic scale pan. The nobles in the crowd are left totally speechless, watching the scene jaw-dropped right after. A whole bunch of other weights start dropping non-stop. One after another on the scale, a crazy mountain of gold weights piles up fast thanks to the mind-boggling flex. The scale glows with a god-tier light as it calculates the final score for the test. The spectators scream in denial, unable to accept the score popping up on screen. Lilia and the Imperial Inspector watch frozen in shock at what's sitting right before their eyes. Lucius just stands there with his back turned in the arena, keeping his cool, imposing posture. The magic screen displays a big fat SS top mark for the young mage. With a stellar result, Lucius grabbed the maximum score of S+ in both defense and attack. With that flex, he was officially crowned the #1 student across the entire class this year. Part of the crowd starts cheering and giving a standing ovation to celebrate the legendary moment. Fran cries tears of joy, shouting out for her young master, while Celestia gets emotional and covers her face. Sitting in his chair, Hector squeezes his fist so hard it actually starts shaking from pure rage. He bites his own lip until it bleeds, completely unable to digest getting smoked by a rival. Meanwhile, Lucius stays chill and locked in on what really matters from here on out. The host announces that the honor medal for the top student of the selection is about to be handed out. The blonde kid steps up to the front of the other applicants to collect his well-deserved prize. The Grandmaster of the Academy watches Lucius with a super serious, locked-in gaze. He channels a powerful wave of green magic to manifest the honor medal. Lucius watches the magic glow drift slowly toward his chest during the ceremony. He drops to one knee respectfully as the honor medal gets pinned right onto his uniform. The young man closes his eyes for a quick second, feeling the room's energy settle down. The director takes the floor to announce the official wrap-up of the award ceremony. He declares that starting tomorrow, everyone's long-awaited academy life is officially kicking off. The new students are told to head over to the right and check out the board for dorm room assignments. Back in the main hall, Fran gives a subtle cough before clearing her throat to talk to Lucius. She dramatically cries over not being able to watch over her young master's daily grind up close. Fran explains that the servants back at the mansion sent a big cheer-up message as soon as they heard he passed. Celestia gently touches her son's face, still super hesitant about seeing him leave. She rests her forehead against his, mentioning she's going to pray every single day for his safety. The mom reminds her boy that tons of other people are going to be rooting for his big success too. Lucius gives a sweet smile, replying he knows that super well and that he'll look after himself. He says his goodbyes, stating he has to bounce, and asks Fran to take great care of his mom while he's away. The young man thinks to himself that graduating at the top of the entrance exam is a solid start toward becoming number 1 in the class. Over in the dorm area, someone shouts out super salty upon noticing the massive gap between the buildings. While some guys get put up in a shiny castle, others get dumped into a rundown, dark shack. Lilia throws a fit over having to share a plain room while the top student gets a literal palace. Her roommate calmly asks her not to burn anything down while focusing on her chess game. The girl with glasses reminds her that the best part about the academy is that you can steal the number 1 spot at any moment. The chess piece drops onto the board right as the scene cuts to the class's very first theory lesson. A few students start talking trash behind Lucius's back, accusing the kid of cheating on the exam. A female classmate guesses that Lucius might just be insanely talented, making Hector even more ticked off. Hector responds with total attitude, claiming his rival's flex was nothing more than a cheap trick. Lucius completely ignores the toxic rumors, while Hector keeps staring him down with pure rage. Outside the classroom, a mysterious hooded figure watches the students move around. The hooded guy sets up on the roof to keep tabs on the room with stealth. Lilia senses a presence coming close and warns the others that the teacher has finally pulled up. Hector grumbles in his head, thinking about what he would have done if he were in a real fight. The professor tells Hector to kill that useless fighting spirit, as he doesn't need any of that in his class. Hector feels the sudden, heavy magic pressure from the teacher and starts sweating bullets at his desk. However, the guy quickly gets back his cocky attitude, saying he has no obligation to listen to him. He mocks the professor, asking if he honestly thought he'd scare him with a silly trick. The other students laugh out loud, commenting that the new tutor doesn't have an ounce of dignity or respect. The hooded teacher stays quiet for a quick moment, facing the wild attitude of the young crowd. He holds up his hand with razor-sharp claws, warning coldly that he will only say this one last time. With a deadly whisper, the tutor drops a command word to silence the whole room. A massive wave of blue magic pressure crashes over the classroom, scaring every single student inside. Hector stands completely paralyzed under the crushing weight of the magic gravity forcing him down. Lilia and her classmates are terrified, realizing the new instructor is a complete monster. While everyone suffers under the heavy gravity, Lucius notices with ease that the teacher is running the show effortlessly. Valerius turns off the pressure on Hector and warns him coldly never to forget that lesson again. He walks calmly through the classroom, reminding everyone that the academy life starting now is going to be brutal. The instructor makes it clear that worthless things like bloodlines or fancy noble family names. Lilia listens in absolute silence, still terrified by the tutor's massive show of strength, holds zero actual meaning or real value within the walls of this institution. The hooded man shows off his icy eyes and sharp claws, displaying his ultimate dominance. He turns his back to the board and states flat out that inside these walls, raw power is everything. His sharp gaze shows he won't tolerate a single bit of weakness or disrespect from his students. Facing all that heavy seriousness, Lucius simply flashes a subtle side smirk. Without wasting any more time on warnings, the instructor declares it's finally time to kick off the lesson. He introduces himself officially to the whole class as Valerius, their new tutor. He explains he'll be the guy in charge of teaching basic magic theory across the academy. Lucius locks his eyes on the professor, instantly remembering who the guy actually is. It's the exact same mysterious imperial inspector who spared his life back when he was just a newborn baby. The young man is surprised to see him there, recognizing that the guy's spiritual energy is amazing. Valerius takes full charge, letting them know the first thing he's teaching is the school's strict rules. He projects a glowing magic display, stating that everyone's ultimate goal here is to graduate as number 1. A big crystal panel pops up in midair to publicly display the updated student rankings. He explains that grades from classes and quests will define everyone's overall spot. Hector finds out he ended up right behind Lucius on the board, which leaves him super annoyed. Lilia goes ballistic seeing her placement, wondering who on earth is the student sitting ahead of her. To reach the top, students need to slide into the top 16 of the ranking to battle in a tournament. This massive event is known by everyone there as the official Royal Academy Duel Tournament. The winner of this tournament not only becomes the number 1 student, but also snags a special divine blessing. Hearing about that mysterious reward, Lucius squeezes his fist with heavy determination. One of the students panics, realizing he'll have to keep up a high score for 4 whole years. Suddenly, a loud beep echoes through the classroom, catching everyone's attention. The magic crystal board updates in real time, tanking the complaining kid's score straight down. Valerius dryly warns that whining and complaining count as negative points on the review. He adds that once a year, the bottom 125 students on the leaderboard will face an instant expulsion with zero right to appeal from the famous Imperial Academy. Hector gets that this is the brutal way the school balances out the student count. The instructor asks if everyone finally gets the actual gravity and danger of failing out here. Skipping any further talk, he raises his powered-up hand and calls the official start of the first practical lesson. A scary, dark dimensional rift tears open right in the middle of the hall before the young students. Lilia freaks out, asking if the teacher is seriously dropping teleportation magic right out of the gate. Even Hector admits the tutor's power is legit worthy of a formidable monster. In the blink of an eye, all the students are teleported over to a valley wrapped in thick fog. Lucius keeps his usual chill stance, while Lilia tries to figure out the new location. Standing before the group, a long, narrow stone bridge shines right in the middle of a dark abyss. Valerius turns to the youngsters and officially announces the start of their very first field test. He tries to calm them down, claiming simply that the main objective of the task is super easy. The mission just consists of walking all the way across that bridge within a 1-month deadline. A few guys start laughing, thinking the challenge is going to be ridiculously easy to finish. 2 overeager guys take the lead and sprint toward the bridge to cross it first. A classmate asks Hector if he isn't going to charge ahead, but the young noble decides to wait and observe. The 2 reckless students run with big smiles, stepping confidently onto the start of the stone path. The second the first guy lays feet on the structure, something weird starts happening immediately. A mysterious green smoke wraps around the first boy the moment he steps on the bridge. He loses his balance completely, while his friend beside him shouts in terror for him to stop. Hector watches the scene coldly, hinting the other guy should back off if he doesn't want the same fate. Out of energy, the boy drops into the dark abyss under the terrified eyes of the whole class. Lilia runs to the edge, asking in a panic what's happening down there to the classmate who fell. Lucius watches the professor walk calmly across the bridge and starts breaking down the real secret behind the test. The blonde youth figures out that the stone structure rapidly drains all the spiritual energy of whoever touches it. Valerius explains that the real goal is to stack enough energy to withstand the drain for a whole month straight. One of the students raises a shaky hand to ask the instructor about the crazy difficulty of the test. He asks what the pass rate has been for other classes on this exact same trial up to today. The professor calmly answers that the pass rate usually hovers right around 20% every year. However, he turns around with a creepy smirk on his face, mentioning he misspoke. He fixes his words immediately, clearing up that he wasn't talking about the success rate. In a terrifying tone, the tutor reveals that actually, only 20% of the students walk out of there alive. Panic sets in among the students, who realize the only way out is to boost their energy reserves. They freak out, noticing it's practically impossible to level up that much in just 30 days. Watching how the magic acts, Lucius realizes the solution to the test isn't that simple. He calculates in his head that due to the scary speed at which the bridge drains energy, even someone packing a massive amount of spiritual power would fail before reaching the end. The young man concludes that the teacher's advice to focus on stacking more power was just a distraction. With a side smirk, Lucius finally cracks the actual way to beat the challenge. Meanwhile, the scary reality of the survival rate keeps haunting everyone's minds. One of the nobles turns pale from horror, refusing to believe the Royal Academy's exam is this deadly. Another guy cusses in frustration, realizing the classmate who fell off is likely already dead. Panic escalates, and several youngsters shout that they don't plan on throwing away their lives over a simple school lesson. One boy quits the test on the spot. Stating he's going to ask his mom to cancel his enrollment right away, Valerius coldly supports the decision, stating that quitting is the smartest choice for the weak. He finishes by saying those with weak minds would end up dying on the battlefield anyway. The instructor orders everyone to start training and vanishes mysteriously into purple smoke. At that exact second, a magic timer pops up floating in midair to start the countdown. With time running out, the students gear up to face the hardest 30 days of their lives. Lucius keeps his golden eyes locked on the bridge, completely confident he will hit his target. 20 days fly by fast, and the timer shows that time is running out. The youngsters train hard under the rain, hauling heavy logs on their backs to strengthen their bodies. Lilia runs frantically, pushing her limits to the max while letting out shouts of pure rage. She tosses a massive boulder to the ground, scaring her classmates who almost got crushed by the impact. Out of breath, the redhead girl thinks she needs to power up if she wants to survive that nightmare. Meanwhile, other students can barely handle the weight of sandbags tied to tree branches. One of the guys screams in surprise and shock at what he just witnessed right beside him. He sees Lilia lifting a stone 10 times bigger than her own body with absolute brutal determination. With popping veins and a crazy smile, the redhead girl shows she's not backing down for anything. In another corner of the valley, Hector places his gloved hand on the ground to start his own training. He sets up in an isolated spot in the valley, watching the mysterious stone bridge from a distance. With his red, locked-in eyes, the noble coldly breaks down how the bridge's magic works. Hector tosses a small pebble toward the structure to do a practical observation test. He notices the curse only triggers when the physical contact time passes a certain limit. The second the pebble stops on the structure, it gets wrapped in dark smoke that drains its energy. Knowing this, Hector flashes a confident smile, cooking up the perfect strategy to cross over. He draws his sword and wraps himself in a massive aura of highly destructive red flames. With a devastating boost, he leaps toward the bridge to start his crossing at top speed. Hector charges fast across the stone bridge, leaving a trail of red dust in his wake. Eyes locked on the finish line, the swordsman focuses all his physical strength and drive. With only 3 days left before the deadline, Lucius stays sitting down, meditating peacefully. He thinks to himself that he's already cracked the secret to the test, and the answer isn't raw force. The real trick to passing the trial lies in a refined energy manipulation technique. Lucius remembers that in his past life, to fight using only a tiny amount of energy, he had to master super meticulous energy control down to the cellular level. It was through repetitive training, as precise as threading a needle, that he ended up creating and perfecting the devastating technique known as Phantom Shadow. But that insane level of training took a heavy toll, making him cough up tons of blood. He almost died from exhaustion countless times while trying to reach perfection with the technique. To him, applying that absolute control from his past life to current magic is a walk in the park. Other students whisper that the blonde guy quit and used big money to cheat his way through the selection. They call him a cursed kid, saying the spoiled heirs act is ending right here. She watches the boy from a distance in silence while he stays locked into his meditation. With just 2 days remaining, Lilia and the other applicants keep grinding exhaustively. On the final remaining day, Hector pulls off rapid sword strikes with his absolute max speed. The silver-haired youth flashes a cocky smirk, feeling totally prepared for the big moment. On deadline day, the students gather at the bridge entrance while Lucius remains seated. Lilia stares down Lucius from afar with anger, clueless about the passive attitude from the class's top student. She gets annoyed that he spent the whole month sitting there without making a single move. With seconds left before the timer hits 0, Lucius slowly opens his eyes. In the final second remaining, the blonde youth flashes a chill, super-confident smile. The timer hits 0, and Valerius pops back up, imposing right in the middle of the bridge, wrapped in purple energy. The instructor calls out loudly that the promised 1-month deadline has finally come to an end. He stares down the group of students gathered at the cliff's edge to kick off the practical review. Valerius asks to see the results of their training and inquires who will be the first to cross over. The young crowd looks around nervously and hesitantly, aware of the lethal danger that bridge brings. While Lucius stays put, the others start whispering, asking who's going to lead the charge. 2 guys start arguing, shoving the job of starting the crossing onto each other. Out of nowhere, 2 determined candidates step forward at the exact same time to volunteer. Hector and Lilia take the front with full attitude, stating they'll be the first to cross over. The 2 start arguing wildly over who stepped up and took the first step. First, Hector insists on going first, leaving Lilia so mad she demands a game of rock, paper, scissors. Lucius watches the petty fight from afar. Finding the silly rivalry between the 2 pretty funny, Lilia wins the match and celebrates loudly, while Hector bitterly regrets the loss. One of the guys comments sadly that he trained super hard the whole month only to not go first. Suddenly, 2 other guys ignore Lilia's victory and sprint right past her. She screams in rage, realizing the rock, paper, scissors game was completely pointless in the end. Several applicants start running together across the bridge, instantly triggering the purple energy. The curse's dark smoke wraps around the group with extreme violence, making them scream in pain. Hector watches his classmates' stupidity with disgust, muttering that they were idiots for sprinting. Unable to withstand the curse, 3 more candidates lose their strength and fall into the abyss. Those left on the edge cuss out of fear. Knowing that boy's energy was pretty high up, Lucius watches the falls back to back, thinking that using brute force against the bridge is useless. He mentally concludes that the real answer to the test has nothing to do with energy levels. The key is refining your own spiritual energy inside your body faster than the bridge can drain it. Mastering the basics of constant energy refinement is the only actual method to pass the exam. Valerius mocks the situation, asking if not a single person will be capable of crossing the entire bridge. One of the guys snaps back terrified, shouting that they'll die instantly if they end up falling off. Lilia shoves past the scared students and steps up firmly toward the start of the bridge. She sets up at the structure's entrance, staring down the abyss and the thick fog around her. The young redhead closes her eyes and takes a deep breath, focusing all her determination to start opening her eyes. They glow with a fiery rage as she locks onto her own magic. Lilia steps onto the bridge and instantly wraps herself in blazing flames to fight off the purple curse. She lets out a crazy shout and blows up her hot fire with mind-blowing intensity. Valerius watches, impressed by the amount of power let loose, but knows that alone isn't enough. Bit by bit, Lilia's flames start fading as she drops to her knees on the ground. She tries getting back up with heavy struggle, feeling the dark fog siphon away her final strength. The instructor notes that the bridge's curse is relentless against anyone using pure brute force. Even totally wiped out, Lilia stomps her foot hard on the stone floor, forcing another fire burst. The professor widens his eyes slightly, catching the crazy willpower displayed by the girl. Out of breath, she screams for no one to underestimate her, keeping her power pushed to the absolute max. She roars furiously, saying she won't lose to some dumb bridge, and pushes forward through a massive explosion. With a crushing, fire-filled stomp, she finally manages to reach the opposite bank. Valerius is blown away, realizing the girl used pure willpower to overload the drain mechanism. Lilia passes the professor at the finish line, still wrapped in the heat of her own flames. The second she sets foot on solid ground, she completely loses her strength and drops face first onto the floor. Totally spent, she gasps heavy for air while Valerius watches her quietly with his usual unreadable look. With a teasing smirk on her face, she lifts her head and asks the professor what he thought of that performance. Valerius simply announces that she passed the test, making Lilia cheer with joy right on the floor. Hector watches his rivals win with disgust, while seeing other applicants struggling along the path. He coldly comments that Lilia's method was totally inefficient and would only mess her up in actual combat. The silver-haired youth begins breaking down the bridge's structure once again with high attention. He remembers that right before the bridge's curse starts siphoning the target's spiritual energy. There's a tiny window of time it takes for the spell to activate the moment touch happens. Knowing there's that small delay, Hector firmly grips the hilt of his sheathed blade. He concludes the perfect strategy is simply not giving the bridge the time to react at all. Hector takes off at mind-blowing speeds, slicing through the air and leaving the others stunned. He sprints, taking super fast, light steps, giving zero chance for the curse to catch up to him. Landing on the other bank, Hector aggressively draws his weapon and executes a swift strike right next to the tutor. With a sharp, threatening gaze, he displays all his cockiness right in front of his new teacher. Valerius mentally acknowledges the guy was smart to think outside the box, but he warns that trying to take out the instructor is unacceptable, though Hector brushes it off and demands his score. The professor confirms he passed the trial, and the youth snaps back that it was obvious and totally natural. The other applicants are amazed by Hector's speed, whispering about his raw talent. Lilia watches the master head back to the bridge entrance to move forward with reviewing the others. Every eye turns to Lucius when they realize the top selection student is about to step up. However, a few candidates doubt him upon noticing his super passive, chill posture. They whisper that Lucius doesn't seem to pack that much spiritual energy or physical enhancement skills. Valerius flashes a subtle side smirk, curious to see what the blonde youth's move will be. Lucius starts walking slowly, as sparks of blue energy pop up all around his body. He steps onto the bridge with ultimate peace, leaving the failed students behind in pure shock. The hooded girl catches on that the blonde youth's top student title definitely wasn't a fluke. Taking slow, firm steps, the boy moves across the structure completely unbothered by the purple energy. Lilia scoffs at Lucius's plain walk, but Valerius knows that right there is the perfect answer. Taking his time and looking super elegant, the young man finishes the path and sets foot on solid ground. The professor watches Lucius finish the exam, thinking to himself that maybe he expected too much out of nowhere. Another candidate manages to cross right after and celebrates his win like crazy. The guy shouts to the others that the bridge can now be crossed normally without any danger. Several other students cross the bridge successfully, breaking into hyped cheers over the win. Lilia stands surprised at their performance, while Hector scoffs, calling them simple-minded. Valerius watches the celebrating students with a serious, thoughtful look, knowing something's hidden underneath. The instructor catches on that all that sudden ease was actually the work of Lucius Elminster. He stands stunned, noticing the blonde youth pulled off an unbelievable feat completely under the radar. Lucius channeled such an exact amount of energy that he managed to shut down the bridge's array. He unraveled a complex, ancient spell that hadn't been broken once in 1,000 years of history. Suddenly, a cracking sound echoes through the valley, drawing everyone's attention. They notice in complete shock that the curse formula itself was totally destroyed. The stone bridge snaps apart in a massive explosion of dust and lightning, scaring the whole class. Lucius just watches the scene with total chill, holding a tiny magic spark in his hand. The youngsters whisper, terrified, that the blonde guy is a monster who took his power way too far. Valerius stares at Lucius with a locked-in look. While the boy keeps a neutral face, a few students try convincing themselves the bridge was probably just super old and worn out. Another guy mutters, scared that they could have died if they'd taken a single second longer. Despite the massive scare, the candidates celebrate managing to pass the test just in time. One of the boys looks back and starts questioning the fate of those who failed. He feels bad for the classmates who dropped first. Remembering they gave it their absolute all too, Valerius stands still facing the ruins of the stone bridge that just got wrecked. The instructor snaps his sharp claws, telling the group not to worry about that. Under his magic command, all the candidates who had fallen start floating back up. One of the guys screams, terrified, asking shouldn't all of them be dead after that drop. The professor turns to the gathered class and begins delivering his final statement for the test. With a mysterious side smirk, Valerius announces that every single person there passed. A boy asks, confused, if the ones who fell off the bridge shouldn't have been flunked out. The tutor explains the test served to review cultivation, but the real goal was judging pure drive. The rescued youngsters are placed gently on the ground, crying tears of relief for being alive. He praises everyone's guts for not running away, even with death staring them right in the face. The instructor finishes by saying, the spiritual strength displayed will serve as a weapon far greater than talent. The students feel inspired by Valerius's words, while Lilia watches them proud. Hector stays silent with a cold gaze. Processing everything he just witnessed, Valerius solemnly states that the step taken by each person that day holds priceless value. All the candidates finally relax and start celebrating their well-deserved victory on the trial. With a look of respect, the professor officially congratulates everyone on passing. Under the bright sun, the instructor declares he's super proud of the class's performance. Lilia snaps back cocky that it was obvious. While the others keep celebrating, Lucius just watches the whole celebration from afar, keeping his isolated, chill posture. The blonde youth sports a serene look, happy to have cleared the very first task. The redhead girl locks her attention on the instructor as he gears up to drop a new update. Valerius warns that passing is different from grades, letting them know he's revealing the updated leaderboard. He calls out Lucius Elminster in 45th place. Leaving the blonde guy completely unbothered, Lucius accepts the result without showing a single drop of surprise or disappointment on his face. His classmates whisper confused about how the blonde ranked so low after crossing the bridge with total ease. A few students start placing high bets that Hector is definitely securing the top spot on the board. Others bet Lilia might have snatched the lead due to the massive effort she put in. The instructor draws everyone's eyes by calling out 46th place on the board. He reveals the name of Noah Raven, the mysterious youth living hidden under a dark hood. Hector gets completely furious upon realizing he got outranked by a total nobody. The class whispers in shock, seeing the hooded Noah ranked right above the famous Hector. Lilia rants, super annoyed for placing behind someone so low-key and plain. Lilia rants even harder, pointing right at Noah Raven, who shrinks timidly under his hood. Lucius watches the drama stirred up by Lilia from a distance, staying totally calm and quiet. The instructor takes the floor to officially wrap up the evaluations, telling them to accept their rankings. She feels bitter for placing 57th, admitting he actually outplayed her. Hector ranks 47th and tells a classmate to shut her mouth when asked if he's doing okay. The board locks Lucius into 45th place, with the mysterious Noah right behind him in 46th. The whole room shifts as tons of students cry over their drops while others celebrate climbing up. The instructor asks for everyone's attention to start breaking down how class routines will run, starting tomorrow. He reveals that starting the next day, students will be split and organized into 4-person squads. Valerius explains that the squad will be their core unit for attending classes and running quests. He adds that, naturally, the stronger the squad is, the more dangerous the assigned missions will be. The professor reminds them that rankings are individual, turning even squad mates into direct rivals. The youngsters whine over the harsh setup, realizing they'll have to constantly clash against each other. Valerius warns that squad setups and each group's first practical quest will be dropped the following day. However, he drops an absolute bombshell, revealing the top 4 ranked students will be grouped into one single squad. Lilia loses her mind in rage, realizing she'll have to team up with her biggest rivals. She instantly starts bossing people around cockily, demanding the other 3 stay out of her way. The instructor wraps up his speech and tells everyone to gear up properly for tomorrow. Lucius keeps his unbothered face, already planning out his next moves at the academy in his head. While Lilia demands the shy Noah introduce himself, some mention their group is going to catch awful quests. The blonde youth thinks that even though it's a hassle, this challenge will be super useful to make him even stronger. Valerius drops one last detail, warning that the top 4's first quest is already set in stone. With a teasing smirk, he reveals their job will happen right during tomorrow's practical field workout. The 4 prodigies stare down the professor, with faces ranging between pure rage and total coldness. The task dropped by Valerius is simple on paper. They just need to land a single hit on him. The next day, Lilia scoffs at the quest, taking it as an insult that they only need to land one hit. She decides to make the first move, letting her squad mates know she's stepping up first to show them how it's done. Valerius just smirks mysteriously and warns the youngsters not to jump to early conclusions. Out of nowhere, a colossal shockwave of blue energy slams right into the 4 prodigies of the group. He warns that even being the best in the class, not a single one of them would stand a chance fighting him solo. Flexing all his dominance, the instructor dares them to attack together, all 4 at the exact same time. Lilia, Hector, and Noah feel the massive magic pressure and lock in super seriously for the fight. Lucius keeps his usual chill composure, staring down the powerful professor without showing an ounce of fear. A storm of sky blue energy and dust starts spinning wildly around Valerius. Lilia scoffs and charges out front, set on landing that very first strike all by herself. Lucius locks his eyes on his opponent, remembering that the guy is a famous imperial inspector. The youth knows the master is one of the strongest military heads, and few in the academy could beat him in a duel. Valerius just holds up his finger mockingly, while Lucius flashes a subtle smirk back. The squad kicks off their coordinated team assault, combining fire magic, swordplay, shielding, and speed. Lucius catches the perfect opening, deciding to use the fight to test out his current power level. The combined fire, magic, and sword strikes slam hard into the tutor's lightning barrier. Hector executes a fast sword strike, but Valerius blocks the blow using just his claws. The clash between Metal Blade and the professor's claws sends a massive shockwave slicing through the air. Hector pushes the attack in rage, but the instructor just smirks mockingly at his lack of raw strength. At that exact second, Lilia pops up floating overhead to drop a heavy fire attack from above. She drops down at high speeds, gathering a massive amount of flames into her clenched fist. With eyes blazing in fury, the redhead girl focuses all her destructive force into that punch. Lilia's fire fist slams into the ground, sparking a colossal fire explosion across the whole field. However, Valerius blocks the fiery strike head-on, using only one of his bare hands. Taking advantage of the opening, the mysterious Noah triggers his dark magic circle to strike from behind. Noah activates his dark magic array right under Valerius's feet to try and lock him down. Noah channels his dark magic, holding out his hands to paralyze the instructor. Right then, Lilia and Hector jump on the moment to charge forward together against their opponent, but Valerius effortlessly blocks the magic blast using his energy barrier. Ticked off by the backup, Hector destroys the incoming attacks. Complaining that Noah is getting in the way, Lilia runs furiously toward the action, screaming to get Hector's attention. Suddenly, the redhead girl grabs Hector's head by force, leaving him totally confused. Lilia whines at him for jumping out of nowhere out front, while Hector calls her an annoying nightmare. She asks if he wants to catch a beating. While Valerius and Noah just watch the petty fight go down, Valerius turns toward the hooded guy to make his next move. The instructor keeps his cold, locked-in gaze on his opponent's moves. Meanwhile, Lucius watches the fight from afar, starting to gather his own energy. The blonde youth holds out his hand, focusing a bright, powerful blue light. Lilia and Hector recover fast and sprint together to attack the professor. A massive column of blue lightning surges onto the field right in front of Valerius. The powerful instructor lets loose his own electric blast to shield himself from the strike. The impact sparks a big energy explosion that blows Hector and Lilia backward. Hector tries catching his footing from the shockwave while taking in the destruction around the area. Lucius steps out calmly through the dust with light steps, completely scratch-free. The MC sighs, thinking to himself that the situation is looking super chaotic. He politely asks the professor to be more careful with the academy's facilities. Valerius stands tall, right in the center of a giant crater carved out by the clash. The instructor flashes a challenging smirk, and Lucius responds with a confident, threatening look. Lilia screams that she isn't done yet, and Hector promises he'll slice him up on the next round. Lucius keeps his cool, continually analyzing his opponent's moves with a sharp mind. The trio restarts the clash, exchanging crazy fast, heavy blows against the professor. Valerius drops a heavy wind blast to knock Hector and Lilia back, all at once. Lucius is surprised to spot a super crucial detail in the guy's movement pattern. The youngsters are thrown back by the sheer force of the wind, whipped up by the powerful tutor. The MC locks his focus on the instructor, beginning to crack his fighting style. He catches on that even though it looks like Valerius is taking on all three together, the reality is totally different. The master is taking them down one by one at insane speeds, almost invisible to the human eye. He notices the only opening pops up behind the opponent, shifting directions totally at random. Knowing this, the young man decides to build a plan to successfully hit that exact blind spot. Lucius plans to predict where the gap will pop up by calculating the exact timing of the attacks. Set on winning, Lilia plants her feet firmly on the ground to prep for the next charge. She complains about being tired, but warns the instructor he shouldn't underestimate her under any circumstances. Valerius just smirks, summoning multiple glowing purple spikes floating all around him. Hector and Lilia dodge fast, avoiding the magic spikes launched right at them. The purple attacks spread across the whole field while the youngsters scramble to dodge. Noah stays focused on his spell when he notices Lucius sprinting right past him. The professor keeps blocking the endless charges from Hector and Lilia effortlessly. He easily dodges a sword, slash, and a heavy punch coming right at his face. Lucius climbs up a tree to watch the fight and wait for the precise moment to move. Lilia and Hector try out a team attack, dropping fire and sword strikes at the exact same time. Watching the play from above, Lucius knows super well that a direct charge like that won't work out. The professor blocks the strikes and blows back the three opponents without showing an ounce of sweat. Right then, Lucius leaps from the high tree, gathering glowing magic in his hands. With a confident smirk on his face, the MC realizes he successfully found the opening. A massive explosion of blue light fills up the battlefield right behind the tough instructor. A massive blast of blue light shines right in front of Lucius following his attack. Hector and Lilia cover their faces to guard themselves against the intense glare of the explosion. The dust begins settling down slowly as the magic energy clears out. Lucius keeps his cool, analytical face, watching the result of his strike. To everyone's shock, Valerius stands completely untouched inside his shield. Hector stands frozen, whispering in total disbelief that this can't be happening. Noah thinks worriedly that even with a heavy strike like that, they didn't put a single scratch on the instructor. Valerius smirks, praising the group for managing to force him into using defensive magic. The professor drops his blue windshield while facing Lucius dead-on. However, he mockingly states he expected way more from the young prodigies. The master warns that if they fail within an hour, the team will be broken up and dumped into the low-class. Hector and Lilia get extremely mad and humiliated by the instructor's harsh words. He tells them to think about what fighting as a squad actually means, warning he won't hold back anymore. He advises Lucius that it'd be smart to cook up a better plan than just waiting around for openings. The blonde boy just listens to the advice quietly with a locked-in look. Lilia starts throwing a total tantrum, screaming that the guy ticks her off and doesn't even feel human. After venting, she locks her eyes on Lucius while Noah just watches quietly. The redhead walks over to Lucius with big strides, calling him over for a real talk. She asks straight up if he has any plan in mind for them to clear the test. Lucius looks back at her without rushing, keeping his chill stance in front of the girl. She admits he was the only one to make the master use defense, deciding to hear out his idea. The girl clenches her fists, showing she hates having to ask others for help. She makes it crystal clear she flat out refuses to lose on a placement test like this. The MC finally starts talking, bringing back the moment of the previous attack. His three squad mates pay close attention to every single word coming out of his mouth. Lucius reveals he caught a slight distortion in the master's barrier. When his spell hit, Hector looks surprised, asking if he really managed to spot a distortion on that strike. The blonde explains that the professor's defensive barrier works in a very specific way. He details that the magic focuses spiritual energy right at the point of impact to harden. Lucius concludes that if they strike multiple spots at the exact same time, the master's defense will weaken down. Noah is blown away that the blonde cracked the spell in a fraction of a second. Lilia sparks flames in her hands upon catching the logic behind the tutor's weakness. She smirks, concluding that the more simultaneous strikes they land, the better off they'll be. The MC confirms it, asking with a smirk if they're capable of pulling off that feat. Hector smirks arrogantly, telling Lucius not to think he's doing this to help him out. Noah steps up too, promising he can help by creating the needed amount of attacks. Now, way better coordinated, the four youngsters set up and face the Imperial instructor. Valerius invites them to charge all at once to see what strategy they cooked up. Lilia takes the dare, and the group lunges in sync to kick off the new offensive. The trio hits Valerius's barrier at the exact same time from totally different directions. Meanwhile, Noah triggers his dark magic circles to back up his squad mates. The professor catches they want to beat him through numbers, but scoffs at their skill level. Hector focuses his rage and full strength into his sword to shatter the enemy defense. He drops a super powerful vertical strike right against the tutor's barrier. The fierce impact creates cracks in the spiritual energy guarding the instructor. Hector shouts out Lilia's name for her to drop the next combo move. The redhead pops up right after, stacking a massive amount of fire in her fists. She drops down at high speeds, focusing all her destructive force to land the blow. The double team of sword and fire hits Valerius's defensive barrier dead on. The tip of Hector's sword pushes into the barrier, starting to shatter the enemy defense. Valerius admits that was their best attack so far, but drops a quick warning. He starts gathering powerful blue energy in his hands, saying it's a real shame both Hector and Lilia realize in total panic that they're completely out of strength. Noah drops to the ground, wiped out too, unable to keep up the magic support. Suddenly, Lucius places his hand over theirs on the sword hilt to lend them a hand. With a locked-in look, the MC states firmly that the fight isn't over yet. Lucius channels a massive wave of mana that fuses directly into Hector's blade. Feeling the fresh energy, Hector and Lilia muster their final strength to land the strike. Together, the three force the sword with everything they've got against Valerius's defense. The overwhelming power let loose leaves Lilia and Hector totally mind-blown by that strength. Valerius opens his eyes wide in complete shock, watching his defense get totally shattered. The barrier explodes into 1,000 pieces, whipping up a wind wave that spreads everywhere. Valerius takes a few steps back, while the youngsters try catching their breath after the attack. Lilia and Hector look eagerly toward the instructor to see the final result of all that effort. Spotting a light bleeding scratch on his cheek, Valerius smirks and announces their pass. Hector starts laughing out loud in relief, and Lilia cheers happily, shouting that they pulled it off. Noah thanks the heavens for the win, but passes out cold from exhaustion right after Hector and Lilia collapse onto their knees on the grass, completely drained from the effort. The redhead mentions they should thank her for her power, but Hector snaps back saying she'd make a decent servant. Lilia screams annoyed, asking what he just said, but the guy replies he doesn't repeat himself. Lucius just watches the typical banter between his two teammates with a light smirk. The MC then looks thoughtfully at his own hand, recalling what he felt inside. He wonders what that mysterious feeling was at the exact moment of that final attack. Lucius felt like his magic was fusing seamlessly with the blade itself. That mix of spellcraft and swordsmanship brings back core memories from his old past life. He realizes that if he manages to master this technique, he'll hit a brand new level. The blonde boy smirks happy upon realizing the massive hidden potential he just unlocked. Instructor Valerius repeats, in an imposing tone, that the squad cleared the challenge with flying colors. He explains that the true goal of the test was making them catch the real value of teamwork. The tutor advises them never to forget the harmony they hit during that final team attack. Right after, the powerful professor vanishes from the field amidst a dark purple smoke. Lucius keeps reflecting on the insane rush of fusing magic and swordsmanship into one single strike. He knows mastering this power will be his deadliest weapon to take down his ultimate enemy. Sometime later, the story takes us inside the grand interior of the Academy Library. Lucius is seen sitting in a high chair, totally locked into reading an ancient book. The book breaks down core concepts regarding how spiritual energy operates and functions. The work explains that refined spiritual energy flows through internal energy channels in the body. That power then converts into mana for mages or battle energy for swordsmen. The text emphasizes that people are usually born with only one of these energy channels active. He ponders if it would really be impossible to run that fusion technique working completely, solo. The MC closes the book for a second while staying lost deep in his thoughts. The book drops legends about rare individuals born with both energy channels active in their bodies. Reading that golden piece of info, Lucius flashes a hyped smirk, finding his true path forward. He remembers trying to put the theory into practice, holding his own sword. The boy recalls attempting to pull off the channel fusion solo during a late-night session. Even though the first attempt ended in a total fail, he didn't give up for a second. Lucius felt a slight trace of the battle energy he mastered back in his past life as Zeno. He suspects the energy channel he used in the past might still be lying dormant inside him. If he wakes up that power and masters magic, he can hit the founder's perfect fusion. Back to reality at the academy, a mysterious woman watches the class of students from above. Instructor Kathy introduces herself with tons of hype and a megaphone, kicking off a special activity. She announces the event will be a high-level brawl between different class years at the academy. Older, experienced students watch the freshmen with total disrespect, underestimating their squad. Kathy hyped them up to give their absolute best to climb their respective school rankings. Lucius notices these senior opponents hold much higher leaderboard spots than theirs. The upperclassmen keep dropping sarcastic laughs, trying to intimidate the young group. Lilia gets super ticked off and screams, telling them to stop staring at her like that. The teammates stand firm in their spots, ignoring the taunts coming from their rivals. Hector looks away cocky while Lilia keeps huffing in rage right next to him. Out of nowhere, a massive, muscular student intentionally bumps hard into Lilia's shoulder. She screams enraged, but the huge guy drops a fake apology, saying he didn't see her down there. Lilia stands shocked at the guy's crazy size while the others apologize half-heartedly. Kathy explains that the rules of the challenge are simple and involve hunting down an item in the forest. She reveals that the squad managing to snag the spirit orb first will walk away victorious. Lucius repeats the item's name, starting to plan how to secure the relic before everyone else. The instructor explains that the orb massively boosts the spiritual energy of whoever absorbs it. The other students get hyped up, knowing the orb can save them whole years of brutal grinding. Hearing the artifact's insane perks, Lucius flashes a subtle, confident-side smirk. The MC realizes this is the absolute golden opportunity he's been waiting for. He knows the orb's energy can awaken his dormant battle channel from his past life. At the starting signal, multiple students sprint out full blast, locked on to snatching the relic. Lucius, Lilia, and Hector gear up too. With locked-in, serious looks for the rush, Kathy launches a bright flare into the sky, officially calling the start of the major showdown. The quad sprints at top speeds down a tight, dark trail deep inside the forest. Lucius suddenly senses the rapid approach of two opponents coming in fast from the flanks. The two rivals show off taunting smirks while holding their combat weapons. One strikes with a spear while sarcastically apologizing for taking on freshmen. Hector gets annoyed, asking if these guys are seriously the higher-ranked ones. The attackers leap from the treetops, shouting for the youngsters to drop right there. However, Lucius uses a fast electric shock strike to easily repel both of them. Lilia and Hector watch the clean counterattack, left super impressed by the boys' moves. The blonde guy advises them not to care about rankings, reminding them of the test with Valerius. With a firm, locked-in gaze, the MC declares that they are legit strong. Lucius's words spark a fresh flame of motivation inside his partners' hearts. Right after, new rivals pop up on the path, mockingly asking who was supposed to be strong. A cocky, blonde senior warns that the real fight for them is kicking off right now. Hector repeats the line with total disgust, gearing up for the incoming clash. The upperclassmen announce they're starting the freshman hunt to steal their ranks. The blonde opponent starts building up a huge amount of green electricity in his hands. He fires off a devastating electric blast right toward Hector, who sets up to make a move. Hector keeps his sharp focus, showing zero signs of fear as the attack closes in. With a single fast slice of his blade, he completely destroys the green electric blast. The opponent stands totally clueless, seeing his best magic shut down so easily. Without wasting time on the shocked enemy, Hector keeps charging forward, locked on his goal. Meanwhile, two other warriors jump forward together against Lilia, telling her not to get full of herself. The two men leap down, dropping heavy coordinated strikes with their blades. Lilia locks her focus on their movements, prepping to pay back the favor in full. Heavy flames wrap around the redhead's arms, boosting her destructive force. She waits for their approach at the exact right second to drop a heavy explosive punch. The clash between fiery fists and enemy blades sparks a massive explosion. Lilia clicks her tongue annoyed, telling her rivals not to dare sleep on her. The two senior warriors get anxious, feeling her insane pressure. The redhead girl builds up even more flames around her clenched fist. She drops a colossal fire punch, screaming at them never to underestimate her again. Lilia watches the fallen enemies on the ground with a look of total dominance. Suddenly, a rain of razor-sharp ice spikes gets launched right at the group. Noah lets out a painful sound, but stands firm using his barrier to shield the team. He feels he's doing just fine. Comforted by the words of unity dropped by Lucius locked in, Noah triggers his dark power, stating that he's a real part of this squad, too. The young man's powerful magic completely obliterates all the incoming enemy ice spikes. Hector takes the opening to drop a devastating sword strike right onto the rivals. Surprised by the outcome, they proudly realize they managed to beat the upperclassmen. Lucius walks calmly past the defeated bodies, asking if the brawl is already over. His three teammates stare back with huge respect, seeing his mind-blowing flex. Lucius simply lets them know it's time to keep moving to secure the orb. Kathy tracks everything through a magic crystal ball, noting the 5 best groups have already dropped. She stands amazed, realizing the ones behind the wipeout were just freshmen. She acknowledges the MC's 3 partners pack insane potential. However, her main focus shifts completely onto Lucius's figure. She realizes he ran the squad flawlessly and took down seniors without any help. With a dark smirk, the instructor wonders what the boy's actual identity really is. Clueless about that, Lucius Elminster keeps leading his squad toward the target high up in the trees. A mysterious scout uses binoculars to track the youngsters. Meanwhile, the strongest senior squad waits patiently right near the big orb. The sound of fast footsteps echoes through the forest, hinting more people are pulling up. Lucius warns they're close to the orb, while Hector calls for focus regarding the team behind them. The youngsters finally spot the massive tree with the spiritual orb glowing right at the center. The relic leaks intense mystical energy that lights up the whole clearing around it. The group picks up the pace to touch the artifact and lock in the wind fast. Suddenly, Lucius senses a hostile, dangerous presence coming in at high speeds. He holds out his arm with authority, loudly ordering his teammates to halt. Lilia whines, annoyed at the call, but Lucius insists seriously that she just listen. A sudden quake starts shaking the ground, putting the redhead girl on instant high alert. Cracks start forming on the earth around the spirit orb's massive tree. Hector watches the scene shocked, trying to figure out what's rising before them. Noah steps back, terrified, feeling the massive, evil energy pressure surging from the dirt. A mystical rift splits open, releasing a bright light that temporarily blinds everyone present. A colossal, monstrous beast emerges from deep underground, roaring furiously. Seeing the monster's crazy size, other student groups panic and bolt out of there. Lucius, Lilia, and Hector hold their spots, staring down the scary beast without stepping back. One of the inspectors screams in panic, calling for Instructor Kathy to send help. He warns they need to cancel the exam right now and call for backup to lock down the danger. However, Kathy just lets out a lazy yawn, displaying complete zero care for the chaos. She shoots down the request and orders the trial to keep rolling, leaving the other inspector desperate. The woman mentions with a smile that wild surprises like this happen all the time at the academy. The inspector calls her crazy, but Kathy coldly states that anyone who dies right here. Her killer aura freezes the other inspectors completely in their tracks. She finishes by saying whoever dies that easily would never survive a real battlefield anyway. Even totally spooked by her coldness, the inspectors still try arguing back. Catching the tense vibe, Kathy drops a laugh, mentioning she was just messing with them. Kathy guarantees her crew she'll take full heat if things run totally out of hand. Facing her rock-solid calm, the other inspectors just sigh, relieved at her call. She thoughtfully ponders that no magic beast should be able to pop up inside that safe zone. Her eyes take on a serious look as she suspects something fishy is going down. The other students desperately attack the magic beast, trying to hold back its rage. A swordsman channels electricity into his blade and leaps to drop a heavy physical blow. The sword strike slams hard against the giant monster's tough, scaly skin. He notes, horrified, that the beast's scales are getting buffed by energy from the orb itself. Multiple students drop their magic to try stopping the monster's unstoppable push. The clash sparks a bright blast, but seems to deal zero real damage to the target debris, and dust get thrown through the air as the beast shifts without taking a single scratch. The colossal monster glides back into the water, leaking a scary, intense purple aura. One of the freshmen backs off, terrified, realizing the team attack didn't leave even a single scratch. Facing instant danger, the students start panicking, arguing over what move to make. The monster pops back out of the water, locking its sharp jaw right toward the backed-up youngsters. The mouth packed with sharp teeth snaps open, making everyone scream, terrified to run for their lives. Right in the middle of everyone's panic, Lucius leaps fearlessly right toward the monster's open mouth. The other students look up confused, wondering if the blonde kid went totally insane. Lucius floats calmly right before the giant teeth of that scary water beast. Lilia screams, enraged, calling Lucius a total idiot for taking such a risky move. She and Hector watch helpless as the monster's massive shadow covers the boy completely. The MC just flashes a confident smirk, gathering focused energy in his hands. Out of nowhere, an overwhelming power hits the monster straight from the inside out, throwing it backward. Lilia and Hector stand jaw-dropped, totally speechless at what they just witnessed. The colossal creature falls defeated into the water, driving a massive shockwave that shakes the location. A few seniors complain about the freshman, thinking he pulled a reckless stunt without actual field experience. The massive water column blasts sky high with the monster's drop into the deep mangrove lagoon. One of the freshmen points shaky toward the impact site, telling his crew to look over there. The giant monster's body gets launched into the air, completely wrecked by the strike's power. Someone frantically warns that the giant body dropping into the water will spark a local tsunami. However, the monster glows intense and shatters into thousands of pieces while still airborne. A grand explosion of blue and white light clears up the whole forest right before everyone's eyes. Hector, Lilia, and Noah watch the display in total silence, completely blown away by the boy. The other Academy students stand frozen too, unable to process such a crazy display of raw power. Lucius glides down slowly through the celestial glow, like it was no big deal at all. They ask themselves open-mouthed if the blonde kid really wrecked the giant beast solo from the inside out. The MC lands smoothly, holding the hyped green spirit orb glowing right in one hand. He checks out the shiny green gem with a smirk, happy to finally have secured the item. Instructor Kathy glides down gently from above, landing smoothly right before the whole class. Lilia and Hector watch her arrival, keeping their guard high with super sharp looks. Lucius locks his focus on the spirit orb's power, dying to use the stacked energy. Kathy holds up her arms hyped, announcing that the training drill is officially wrapped up. The MC and his partners look up as the instructor floats back into the air using her megaphone. She orders all students to start heading back to the academy grounds. The instructor shows off a super mysterious gaze. Locked right onto the standout freshman, Lucius walks back next to his squad mates, carrying along his valuable prize. The blue-haired senior complains bitterly over getting smoked by a freshman crew. The Prodigy squad walks silently through the foggy forest on their way back to the dorms. Hector cockily comments he found everything way too easy, and Lilia agrees, wanting bigger challenges. Noah drops a quiet laugh, hearing the typical attitude coming from his loud partners. Either way, Lilia decides to swap topics with a super serious face. Hector speaks up, surprised to see Lucius leaking that mysterious green glow. Lilia tracks Lucius from afar, asking herself who he really is behind all that power. Lucius ignores the looks around him, locking all his attention onto the magic gem he's carrying. He breaks down the object up close, confirming it really is a concentrated spirit energy orb. Lucius realizes the spiritual energy packed inside the gem is crazy dense. He thinks that power should be more than enough to finally wake up his battle spirit circuit. Suddenly, a weird noise coming from the bushes catches the whole freshman crew's attention. A mysterious guy walks up, praising the mind-blowing strength of the young students. He fakes being so scared he couldn't even move, while Lilia recognizes him from that morning. The guy mentions he was super impressed, barely believing they were just first-year freshmen. Lucius stays super suspicious, tracking their approach with high caution. He praises Lucius, saying the other three pack crazy energy too, declaring himself a big fan of everyone he holds out his hand, saying that despite being weak, he's been at the school forever and wants to be friends. Lilia looks at the senior's held-out hand with doubt, not feeling super convinced. However, she decides to toss suspicion aside and accepts the handshake with a smile. The two bring their hands close to lock what seemed like a friendly deal between them. But at the final second, the guy's face twists into a super evil smirk. He drops a brutal surprise attack straight onto Lilia before she can even react. The girl stands completely shocked, catching a full hit from the cheap blow. The impact sparks a big burst of spirit energy, throwing dust and debris everywhere. Hector and Noah watch horror-struck. Clueless about the reason behind that sudden attack, Lilia passes out cold right away from the force of the blow, blood leaking from her mouth. Lucius catches her fast in his arms, asking furiously what the guy thinks he's pulling. The MC coldly warns that the Academy's training drill is already over. The attacker just lets out a mocking laugh, saying Lucius's reaction was beautiful. He repeats the compliment with a dark look, staring down the blonde youth with evil intent. The senior cockily claims that freshmen are the absolute best prey they could ever ask for. Hector grinds his teeth in rage, realizing they walked right into a super dangerous trap. The guy then mockingly asks if the youngsters have ever heard of the so-called swampers. Several other rundown-looking students step out from the shadows to surround the freshmen. Noah mutters the term with major anxiety, feeling the heavy enemy pressure in the air. The senior explains that the only rule to stay enrolled is avoiding the bottom 125 spots. He mentions they never managed to climb up ranks, but never dropped into the kick-out zone either. With that, students like them end up just growing old inside, stuck at the academy year after year. Due to that miserable situation, these stuck seniors are known by everyone as the Swampers. Lucius keeps his cool, asking straight up what these washed-up seniors are actually after the band's leader complains they spent way too much time there, growing old without breaking mid-rank. He reveals bitterly that because of their failure, they even lost the right to use their family names. Hector taunts them, saying they're nothing more than washed-up cowards clinging to the school. The man screams desperate, confirming they lost everything and don't have many options to climb up in life. He widens his crazy eyes, stating he needs a divine blessing to reclaim everything he lost. The group triggers a massive, glowing magic hourglass, swearing nothing will stop them from getting what they want. Hector spots something terrifying popping up before them, asking himself if that's an actual corpse. A giant pile of skulls emerges wrapped in magic fog, leaking a heavy evil presence. Suddenly, Noah sets up right in the center of a dark magic circle, releasing a massive wave of black energy. Noah's dark power spreads fast across the whole battlefield, catching the rivals off guard. However, one of the Swampers just gives a confident smirk, seeing the boys' power show. They raise their hands toward the giant hourglass, using the magic artifact to siphon that energy away. Hector watches everything shocked, realizing Noah's magic is getting completely shut down by them. The two men keep siphoning all that dark energy straight with their bare hands. The power flows heavy into their palms, creating a kind of purple magic whirlpool. All that drained power gets funneled straight into the mysterious glass container. The bigger guy laughs insanely, claiming that rush of power feels pure god tier. He threatens to keep draining everyone's energy until they can't take it anymore and drop dead. Noah tries keeping his guard up, screaming for the enemy to stay far away from him, but the attacker just laughs even louder while continuing to siphon away his magic power. Seeing the danger, Hector dashes fast to try and help out his squad mate. The big guy readies up to attack the silver-haired boy using the power he just stacked up. Hector realizes the real issue behind the whole situation is that cursed glass hourglass. He leaps toward the artifact, raising his blade to try and smash it with a clean strike. The young man drops a fast, precise slice with his blade straight at the object. However, the strike just passes right through the liquid energy without dealing physical damage to the container. Hector stands completely stunned, seeing his attack dealt zero effect whatsoever. Before he can back off, the big guy grabs him by the neck out of nowhere and mocks him. The villain warns that only the person who triggered the magic flask can touch it while starting to drain Hector. At this critical point, a fast blur cuts across the field straight toward the attackers. It's Lucius, charging forward with a super serious look, set on putting an end to this clown show. He remembers that the enemy flask can absorb any incoming magic attack. On top of that, anyone who directly touches the enemies will get their energy drained away too. Based on that, the MC quickly cooks up a simple physical strategy to take them on. He leaps with full force, dropping a heavy flying kick straight to the big guy's head. The kick's impact lands clean on the attacker's face, who wasn't expecting such a physical move. The strike's raw power is so insane it launches the man far away, freeing Hector from his grip. The big villain crashes hard against the dirt, throwing up a massive cloud of dust and debris. Lucius flashes a light-side smirk, confirming that purely physical attacks work super well. The other senior watches the scene horrified, unable to believe how easily his partner dropped. The blonde walks calmly toward Hector's sword. Lying on the ground right up ahead, Hector tracks the scene pretty weakened, feeling the awful effects of the drained energy. He asks what Lucius plans to do, reminding him that the blonde is essentially a mage. However, the MC simply answers that's not quite the case while gripping the sword. He holds the weapon with complete natural ease, showing he has total command over that blade. With a sharp, dark gaze, he drops a little detail about his past. The two rivals try picking themselves up amidst the dust, looking visibly nervous at the situation. Lucius finally drops that actually, he originally trained as a swordsman. A silhouette of his past life pops up in his mind while he flashes a scary smirk. He drops into a picture-perfect combat stance, making the wind blow wildly all around him. The young man locks his intimidating golden eyes dead onto the remaining enemy left standing. The band's leader finds it funny, asking surprised if the blonde is actually going to use a sword. He mocks him, asking if the little mage decided to play pretend noble knight now. The big guy charges out full blast, screaming he's going to snap that amateur sword in half, but Lucius moves faster, dropping a sequence of slicing sword strikes right against them. The big guy lets out a painful grunt as he catches multiple high-speed cuts. The long-haired senior can barely react, trying to block the strikes using his arm guards. Lucius keeps a completely cold, calculating face while dropping his relentless assault. The blonde fixes his grip on the sword hilt, putting his opponent into absolute panic. He lunges in the blink of an eye, executing a devastating diagonal slash right across the enemy's chest. The brutal cut sends blood flying everywhere, wrapping up the brawl for good. The man drops cold onto the dirt, while Lilia watches the display from afar, totally stunned. The young redhead whispers in complete disbelief that what she just witnessed can't be real. Lucius just turns his face coldly, showing zero fatigue after taking down his rivals. He now locks his focus onto the last member of the enemy squad. Sitting atop the big flask, Hector can't digest it, thinking it's impossible Lucius used that kind of move without mana or battle spirit. He asks himself in total frustration how his rival packs such crazy physical skills. Lucius leaps full force toward the bald guy, who lets out a scream of horror seeing him charge. He begs frantic for the blonde to cool down, admitting he thought he was just some random mage. The bald guy tries logic, thinking that without battle spirit, Lucius is still just a kid. He tries calming down and getting back confidence, thinking he can still flip the game in his favor. The guy rests his hand on the giant hourglass, while the MC tracks him with total disgust. He starts undergoing a freakish mutation, telling Lucius to shake in fear before his new form. The bald guy pops back insanely buff and muscular thanks to the massive energy he just siphoned. Lucius tries dropping a quick sword strike, but the blade barely puts a scratch on the villain's chest. He laughs loud, claiming no normal sword without spiritual energy could ever pierce his body. The brute flexes, saying that right there is the stacked power of all the energy they stole. He tells the freshman to gear up and charges full blast, but Lucius shifts fast to dodge the strike. The villain drops a rapid combo of heavy punches, but the MC manages to weave away with agility. Lucius passes inches away from the opponent's heavy strike, keeping absolute cool amidst danger. The big guy keeps attacking in rage, while the blonde just glides backward across the field. The MC realizes the play is getting tricky without being able to drop his actual skills. He escapes another heavy strike from the enemy, sliding gracefully back to keep distance. The rival tries crushing him, but Lucius blocks the direct hit using his sword as a temp shield. He notes the physical blows from his current body just don't pack enough raw strength to win. The villain drops a rapid punch flurry that Lucius is forced to constantly block. He recalls that in his past life, an enemy like this would be like paper, but his current body is way too weak. The big guy lands a direct punch on the blade, making Lucius use both hands to hold the impact. The villain shouts he's sick of playing around and shoves the blonde boy back with insane force. He rants furious that the young freshman is really testing his patience in this brawl. Lucius gets thrown by the strike's power, landing a bit further away near where Lilia is sitting. Lilia, who is holding Noah, stands horrified seeing the MC get tossed back like that. He recovers fast from the hit, propping up on one knee while keeping a firm grip on the sword. The villain laughs loud and mocks, saying the kid's swordsman skills actually caught him off guard. He says a kid is still a kid, and that without battle spirit, the boy is absolute zero. In this tight spot, the valuable green spirit energy orb drops right next to Lucius. The blonde places his hand over his chest upon feeling a weird pulse coming straight from the green gem. He realizes the battle spirit circuit from his past life is finally responding back. He reaches his hand toward the glow, knowing super well what move he must pull to win. The opponent runs toward the blonde full blast, screaming, "It's time to end him for good." Calmly, the MC focuses on the orb, trying to recall the exact way to absorb that power. He squeezes the shiny gem hard in his hands, kicking off the energy channeling process. Out of nowhere, an overwhelming wave of bright green power starts spinning all around his body. All that energy condenses fast into a single point, glowing insanely bright. The concentrated flow enters straight into the young freshman's chest, sparking a massive thermal shock. Lucius just closes his eyes, accepting that whole massive wave of power flooding his soul. The boy stands firm and focused, while the power rushes heavy through his veins. A strong green light illuminates the whole location for a few moments, leaving the area silent. Opening his eyes, they shine with an intense orange color, overflowing with wild power. He flashes a super confident smirk, thinking that finally, his old power is back. The massive aura from his past life pops up behind him upon waking up his battle spirit circuit. The brute villain breaks into a cold sweat and takes a step back, feeling a crushing pressure in the air. Despite the win, Lucius notes that forcing open the circuit with the orb caused a heavy toll. He realizes his current battle spirit is super limited and will last for just one more strike. The bald rival stands completely terrified, clueless about the massive pressure he's feeling. Lucius leaks a giant red aura, swearing he'll put an end to this brawl with a single hit. The attacker sweats cold in the shadows, frozen in horror before such a crazy flex of strength. With a scary look, the MC lets him know that wrapping up fights fast is his specialty. The villain freaks out seeing Lucius pop up out of nowhere right behind him, on top of the big glass artifact, desperate. He screams at himself not to get hit by that attack under any circumstances, but the blonde ignores the opponent, dropping a powerful slice dead onto the magic hourglass. The glass artifact shatters completely under the force of the energy-imbued physical attack. With the hourglass wrecked, the enemy loses all stolen power and drops completely defeated onto the dirt. Lucius watches the red aura slowly fade off his body, deep in thought over the outcome. He drops to his knees on the ground, out of breath as he realizes the spirit orb's temporary boost ran out. The MC grinds his teeth feeling the fatigue, but keeps a locked-in, focused look. He calms down, noticing that at least his internal battle circuit finally opened up. He knows the process isn't complete and that he still needs the orb to properly channel battle spirit. Even so, a satisfied smirk pops up on the boy's lips, seeing the progress he made. The young blonde feels he finally found the right track to reclaim his strength from back in the day. Noah runs over to him, super worried. Calling his friend's name with a shaky voice, Lilia walks over slowly too, looking at the boy with a mix of respect and shock. She can't hold back, asking straight up what that whole power flex from earlier was about. Hector tracks his squad mates from afar under the moonlight. Keeping a serious, tense silence, Noah asks if he's doing okay, and the MC calmly answers that everything is totally fine. Right then, Hector calls him formally by his family name, cutting through the group's silence. The whole team turns to hear what the silver-haired boy has to say after the fight. He witnessed Hector states that the way the blonde works, the sword belongs to someone with decades of real field experience. He stares down Lucius firmly, demanding to know who the master was that taught him to fight that well. Without getting an instant answer, the silver-haired boy turns to walk away under the moonlight with firm steps. The two rivals trade one last quiet look, full of secrets and their own drive. Lucius just lets out a subtle smirk, finding the seriousness with which his rival stares him down pretty funny. The next day, in the academy hallway, Lilia Hype celebrates that their rank jumped up big time. Noah agrees, recalling everyone managed to secure their valuable spirit energy orbs. Now sitting in 26th place, Lilia teases Noah, saying she won't lose to him anymore. Noah, sitting in 29th place, answers gently that he'll let her win just for now. Meanwhile, Hector Gilbert holds 25th place on the Elite Academy leaderboard. He keeps a super pouting face, visibly unsatisfied with his current spot. The group keeps walking in harmony, chatting casually right behind Lucius. Lucius, who hit the 10th noble spot, reflects on how he managed to pop open his spirit circuit. However, he knows that with his current reserves, he can't trigger that circuit on his own. He concludes his next play must be grabbing a massive boost in his spiritual energy pool. Suddenly, the group catches a big crowd of students gathering up in the main hallway. Everyone is checking out a massive poster announcing the 27th Imperial Combat Betting Tournament. The MC locks his eyes on the flyer, while Lilia asks curious what that's all about. He mutters thoughtfully about this Imperial betting tournament, trying to get the event. Suddenly, someone's hand pops up, scratching Lucius's chin, confirming the question with love. It's instructor Kathy, who pops up floating upside down, asking if he got interested. She mentions that thanks to their big moves on yesterday's test, she easily got rid of those old guys. The blonde keeps a serious look, asking straight up if that was all she wanted with them. Kathy does a flip in midair, playfully asking if they're curious about the tournament. She explains with her megaphone that the combat tournament brings together the best warriors from across the empire. However, a student with glasses comments that the thing is just a betting show for rich nobles. Another student mentions scared about the rumor that people drop dead in that tournament every single time. Kathy confirms with ultimate chill that those scary rumors are mostly true, but she quickly smirks mysteriously, saying there's one major detail they need to know. She explains that the tournament arena stacks up all the spiritual energy released by the fighters. That way, whoever is fighting inside the arena ends up naturally absorbing all that accumulated power. As the brawls move forward, the spirit energy concentration in the area gets even higher. She finishes by saying that the longer you last in the arena, the bigger your base energy boost will be. Lucius stands super surprised by that golden info, while Lilia still looks pretty doubtful. The instructor winks, recommending the tournament to anyone wanting to test their real skills. The other students decide to bounce, finding the event sketchy and useless for rankings. While Lilia whines about the tournament, Lucius locks only on the fact that the arena stacks spirit energy. He realizes that if he wins every single fight, he can snag a colossal amount of power. The blonde turns around, calling instructor Kathy's attention super directly and casually. She stands surprised by the boy's boldness. Turning to face him with a curious smile, he asks where to sign up, leaving Lilia shocked that he wants to enter that event. Kathy gets hyped up, offering to personally send in the young freshman's sign-up. The instructor gets close affectionately, annoying Lilia with her sudden closeness. She whispers that the strongest, top-ranked students plan on entering the tournament too. Kathy cheerfully says goodbye to the group, wishing Lucius good luck in his upcoming fights. The MC flashes a subtle, confident smirk, knowing this is his major window of opportunity. On the day of the event, the host welcomes the crowd to the Grand Imperial Battle Arena. He explains the rules are simple and that nobles can bet any amount on their favorites. The announcer lets them know early bets bring in the biggest cash returns. He insanely hyped the crowd to invest early on to cash out big at the event. A few nobles in the stands comment with disrespect about the presence of a 12-year-old kid in the arena. Lucius walks with firm steps toward the center of the arena, under the eyes of the whole crowd. He notices every participant there leaks an impressive amount of spiritual energy. Tough warriors covered in colorful, threatening auras eagerly await the start of the tournament. The blonde realizes the academy's 3 strongest students haven't pulled up to the event yet. The host then announces with tons of hype the very first opening brawl of the day. The screens display the clash between Lucius and a crazy, muscular, intimidating fighter. He points out the insane physique gap between the two, presenting Lucius as an academy freshman. Next, he presents the rival, Garzas, coming straight from the elite Northern Guard. Lilia comments, surprised that the Northern Guard is one of the strongest escort units in the Empire. Hector praises her knowledge, while both closely track the start of the match. The nobles cheer up in the stands, thinking they're going to score easy cash off a guaranteed win. The host makes gold coins rain on the big screen, letting them know the duel starts in a few seconds. The other warriors laugh at Lucius, mockingly telling the opponent not to go too hard on him. Their energy starts getting drained into the side pillars until they fill up to start the match. Garzas smirks sadistically with his giant axe, ready to crush the little blonde boy. Lucius stays completely calm and silent, showing zero concern or fear. The host holds up his shiny signal hammer, gearing up to clear the fight. He slams the hammer down, clearing the start of the fight, ordering the fighters to start the battle. Garzas charges out at top speed with his red axe, calling the boy a useless brat. Up in the stands, Lilia gets spooked, commenting, "The rival's speed is impressive." The brute drops a heavy top-down strike with his axe, screaming furiously for Lucius to die. The blonde dodges the attack with total ease, calmly noting the rival uses an axe. He blocks the direct hit, using his energy flawlessly, leaving Garzas totally confused. The escort warrior opens his eyes wide, seeing his heavy strike blocked with such ease. Lucius releases a massive blue energy blast that throws the big guy violently backward. The muscular warrior screams desperate as he gets launched back by the violent impact. Lucius keeps his arm held out. With total coldness while the dust settles in the arena, he displays a locked-in, super serious face, showing he's not there to play around. The rival crashes heavily against the ground, left completely knocked out in the arena. The nobles in the stands stand up shocked, completely speechless over the rapid loss. The event host stands frozen too, sweating from nervousness at the outcome. He finally gets his voice back, hyping up that the victory belongs to Lucius Elminster. The spectators scream in rage over losing massive piles of cash on that bet. The guy shouts into the mic that it was a historic twist off just a single strike from the freshman. Lilia bites the table in rage for worrying over nothing, while Hector tells her to cool down. The blonde remains at the center of the stage, while the stacked spirit energy starts wrapping around him. He clenches his fist, annoyed, realizing this power still isn't enough for his circuit. Soon, the second match of the day kicks off, where Lucius faces opponent Ballander Gillen. The host goes wild with another fast knockout off just one single strike dropped by the boy desperate. The bettors start flipping all their picks over to the young prodigy. Lucius pushes forward again, taking down his third opponent with total ease in the arena. The host screams hyped, praising the blonde's mind-blowing run of 3 straight wins back-to-back. The host states that the 12-year-old major breakout is looking straight-up unbeatable in the tournament. Kathy Hype celebrates holding piles of cash, while Lilia screams with joy in the crowd. Hector Gilbert tracks his rival's success with total bitterness, biting his lips in rage. The MC locks onto his hands, confirming the absorbed power still isn't quite enough. Out of nowhere, an insanely heavy, intimidating presence pops up on the upper balcony of the arena. Lucius senses the massive energy and opens his golden eyes wide, recognizing that presence. An imposing figure wrapped in a big cloak walks slowly out from the box's shadows. The man's simple walk makes a giant purple magic pressure shake the whole venue structure. The host swallows hard, mentioning he had no idea such a high-profile guest was pulling up. The mysterious man sits down grandly on his luxury sofa, looking down at Lucius below. The blonde grinds his teeth and keeps his head down, feeling old rage boil up in his chest. The visitor settles in comfortably in his VIP box under the eyes of the whole audience. Lucius squeezes his fists so hard his nails cut his skin, making blood trickle down. He slowly lifts his head, staring back with pure hatred at the box where the man is seated. It's Lord Atlas, the guy sporting long white hair and glowing red eyes. The boy's gaze burns with an unstoppable desire for revenge upon seeing his worst enemy once again. Standing before Lucius is Atlas, the military leader who betrayed and took Zeno's life back in the distant past. While Atlas seems not to care at all, the MC silently swears that he will destroy him.